Creepypastas are great, but what's a horror story you have experienced? I used to work in medical records and one afternoon, hungover, I had to go to the main archive of the hospital. It was in the far corner of the basement, dimly lit and unnecessarily creepy in its own right. Naturally, it was also right next to the hospital morgue. While I was in there grabbing files, I heard a strange sound that resembled someone taking a sharp intake of breath right next to my ear. I grabbed the records and bolted out of the room, locking the door and telling the guy over my right shoulder me how creepy I found that room. When I turned, the corridor was empty. I ran. While sprinting, I got a sense of something rushing up behind me, and my bones turned to ice. Made it back to the main medical records and told my coworker all about it. That evening, just as I was leaving for the day, my boss called me into his office and chewed me out for scaring my coworkers with what had happened. He finished his tirade with, "Why do you think you have a job? We can't get anyone else to work down there." TL doctor saw a figure in the basement of hospital who vanished. Thought it was in my head till I found out others had seen it, and that was why I had a job. I've posted this before, but it's always so weird to think about. This is going to sound like nonsense, and I don't understand it myself, but I promise this really happened to me. A few years back, I moved up to northern Wisconsin for the summer. I had a good job, some friends already there, and it's beautiful during the summer. Anyway, one of my favorite things to do was simply get in the car and start driving. Any direction, it didn't matter. I just wanted to see the beauty of the land. And I was never disappointed. One day, I started driving, again, randomly. But this time I thought I ought to go south on Highway 13. It just felt like the thing to do. But really, that wasn't that unusual as I routinely took 13 south. It's just that this time I had a stronger feeling that I really ought to go that way. I drove on for a number of miles until I came to the White River Dam. There's a little parking lot there for canoers and kayakers. I thought, I really want to park over there. I really do. So I pulled the car over, got out, and looked around. I was overcome with this urge to walk around the edge of the lake above the dam. I realized that whatever it was that I'd been driving towards was there. By now, I'm totally perplexed and a little frightened of what I'm going towards, but I feel a push that is making me go forward. I kept going. The edge of the lake isn't a hard line between solid land and water. There's a significant marshy area and my feet started getting a little wet as I splashed through the water, but I knew I was close. Close to what? I wasn't sure, but I knew it was close. I came to a little bend in the trail I'd been following. Looking, I realized that it, whatever it was on the other side. Before I go on, I need to describe something about the feeling I was having. I don't know if I'm the only person who had this or not, but I remember when I was younger and pretty inexperienced sexually, if there was the prospect of something significant happening with a girl, I would get a unique feeling of excitement and nervousness, combined with a feeling of doing something that might get me in trouble. I'm talking really inexperienced. Maybe it's just me that had that, maybe not, but that was the feeling I was having then. I was very obviously following something that was manipulating that part of my brain. I generally liked that feeling when I used to get it, usually because it meant there was something good in the immediate future. But now, walking through a marsh after feeling like something was calling me there from miles away, well, I was freaked out. But still, I thought I should at least see where this feeling lead me. I went around the corner and thought, there it is. I looked, and there was a thick magazine on the ground. I leaned down and opened it up, and it was full of nothing but lesbian porn. I picked it up, flipped through a page or two, then looked around for anything else, and that's when I realized that the feeling of being pushed was gone. In fact, all of the sensations I'd been having since I started driving were gone. It was just me standing in the North Woods with a magazine full of lesbian porn. The magazine had been partially submerged in water and had mud on it, so I just left it there and drove home. I know this sounds like a joke story, but I swear this is something that happened to me. I'd never had that feeling of being pushed ever before, and I've never had it again. So check it, it was myself, my friend Clint, my friend Austin, and Austin's girlfriend. We've all known each other for about a decade. Austin had asked out his girlfriend, her name is Julie by the way, before Clint got the balls to do it, but he wanted to ask her out bad, and we all knew it. So obviously he was really butthurt that Austin asked first and got Julie as his girlfriend, but I mean we've all been friends forever, no one thought anything that crazy of it. We were all going out to drink. It's like 11 o'clock at night, everything's going cool, we're all pretty faded, and Austin starts making out with Julie at some point. I can see That Clint is mad, but I don't think much of it. I go to the truck to go get more beer out of the back and put it into the cooler with some more ice. Next thing I hear is a bunch of screams. I run back to where they're at and I find Clint with blood all over himself. He had stabbed Austin in the neck and face like 50 times and was proceeding to try to cut off his head while Julie was freaking out. I try to calm him down, but he has the craziest look in his eye and then starts stabbing Julie like a madman. I attempt to save her, but he stabs me even a few times. I get away and go get my phone and call the cops. They get there pretty fast, but all I kept hearing was Julie screaming even more and more until she got quiet. When the cops got there, they found Clint. He tried to slash his own throat and wrist after killing Austin and Julie viciously. They take him and are able to arrest him and take him to the hospital where he barely lives. He is now in prison, and yeah, Austin and Julie passed away unfortunately. I had to go to the hospital as well for my stab wounds, and it was truly the most scariest night I've ever experienced, and don't wish it on anyone. When I was 14, my friend and I were hanging out at the mall in the makeup section of a department store. We were having fun, but everything was too expensive, so we just oot and ot and walked on. I took my lip gloss out of my purse, put some on, and headed toward the mall door to leave. Two huge burly men in plain clothes blocked our path. Without a word, they grabbed us both by the arm and started dragging us through the store. We were terrified. They didn't introduce themselves and didn't speak a single word, so we thought we were being abducted in broad daylight. We kicked and screamed as they marched us through the store, yelling to other customers for help. We don't know these men. Someone help. They're kidnapping us. Everybody just stood slack-jawed and stared. We were inches from the exit door before the men made a sharp turn and marched us down a thin hallway. It turns out those men were poorly trained security guards who thought we were stealing. They showed me video of me putting the lip gloss on. So they thought it appropriate to physically grab us and drag us kicking and screaming through the store as punishment without announcing who they were or what they were doing. I showed them my lip gloss that wasn't even the brand they carried, and they let us off with a warning. When my mom came to pick me up, I cried in her arms. It wasn't a horror story, but I thought that day was the day I would be stolen, raped, and murdered by terrifying men in broad daylight. Not me, but my mom. We took a family trip to Ireland a while back. I was only a baby, so I don't remember this. For context purposes, here are the people that attended: mom, dad, aunt, uncle, cousin, boy, cousin girl, grandma and grandpa. My cousin, boy, is extremely tall. So most everyone had fallen asleep one night, except for my mom. She had a really bad stomachache and couldn't fall asleep. When she got back into bed and closed her eyes, she heard something on the other side of the room. She sat up in bed and saw a dark figure in the doorway. She got nervous, but soon realized it was just my cousin boy. She sleepily told him to go to bed and that she couldn't talk at the moment. In the morning, she asks him what he wanted to talk about so late in the night. He told her that he fell asleep at 9 and never left his room. She got creeped out but didn't say anything. She didn't want to worry him. Later that day in the afternoon, she overheard my aunt and the house owner of the place we were staying at talking to each other. They were talking about the owner's son who had passed away a few years ago. She said he looked a lot like my cousin, but a bit taller. My mom's eyes grew wide and she listened. And the woman said that her son had passed away from a lawnmower accident, and she was devastated. My mom suddenly realized that the man she saw in the door wasn't my cousin, it was that boy. The boy she saw in the doorway was wearing a ripped-up button-up t-shirt that my cousin didn't own, and he was making weird growling noises when she was talking to him. I only heard this story recently as my mom didn't want to creep me out when I was younger. This requires a little bit of a scene set up. So, I grew up in a neighborhood that's backstreet had a park on the corner, then some wooded creek area, a small water processing plant, weird, I know, and then a dirt trail that ran up the backside of every street in the neighborhood. When I was about 9 years old, myself and two friends were at the park making plans for our secret club when a truck that was the same make, model, and color as one of the girls' stepfather pulled up to the parking area of the park, but no one got out or rolled down the window or anything. We stared at it for a minute or two thinking her stepdad was picking us up and started to walk towards it. We got about 15 feet from the truck when we could see through the window that the man inside was not who we were expecting, and suddenly the door started to open. We all three knew in that moment what was happening, and with zero talking somehow all three came up with the same exact idea. We bolted across the park and into the wooded area, down into the creek, up the other side, so we were standing against a fence to the water processing plant. Then got close enough to the road to be hidden, but still be able to see where the truck was. It was driving slowly up and down the street, as if he was waiting for us to just give up and come back out. We waited until he started to drive back towards the stop sign at the corner of the park, and when he was far enough away that we knew we could make it, we ran along the fence line from the creek side of the water plant to the trail side and hid in some thick bushes. He saw us as soon as we came out from the trees, but had to get to the end of the street to pull a U-turn, so we were luckily hidden again before he got to the back of the street again. Then he idled there for what felt like forever before turning back around. Once he was halfway back up the street, we ran up the trail about 4 streets to one of the girl's aunt's house, where we told her family what had just happened. Her uncle grabbed a gun and went to the park, but the truck was long gone. We never saw the truck again, but I often think about how horribly that situation could have gone. If he had caught even the slightest glimpse of our clothes when we hid in the bushes, we would have had nowhere to run.